And we live in this building off Truce, and everybody smokes crack. Like, hey, we can make some money. Big homie came over and I told him to give me something, and by the time the night was over, it was gone. I brought weed to Kansas City. I would sell it to football players, Dale Carter, everybody, Rich. I had the whole city. I had something that nobody had, and it was exotic.
And so at the time, you stand with your sister,
Yes.
no longer stand with mom.
No. Like when I get sick or something, I run home to mom. You know how that go, but yeah, I'm staying with y'all's at.
Did you graduate high school?
No, I got a GED,
When did you
but
stop going?
actually I went after I had men, I went back actually until the 11th grade, and then I dropped back out and I went and got my GED.
So now you kind of getting into the streets.
Right. I'm in the streets now. Well, I'm not gonna say I started going to the skating ring, and now I'm kicking it with different people, and we live in this building off Truce, and everybody smokes crack, and that's where that started. Like, hey, we can make some money. So the big homie came over and was like, I told him to give me something, and by the time the night was over, it was gone, and
So around this time, like, was it like we know this game, and even back then and now, there ain't a lot of females in this game. So back then, was it other females doing it?
Yeah, well, it was like a few chicks I hung around. A lot of them a lot of them sold drugs, and more than anything, they more was boosters. But yeah, some of them sold drugs as well. So yeah, I knew a few of them that was doing their thing.
So getting into it as a female, whether you're a female or a man, you're gonna have experiences with people trying to test you and all that. So did you see any of that?
Oh yes, totally. I got robbed a couple of times. Even my own people stealing from me. My own people stole from me. So I said I got robbed a couple of times. I really got robbed a lot of times because your own people be straight stealing from you. So with that game, there you go. You try to make it work, and people take from you. It's rough.
You go through anything with the law back then?
No, not. I never really got caught up with the law. I mean, everybody around me would go to jail, and all the guys I even dated or messed with would go to jail, and it was so strange. Like, even when I was dealing with a lot of them, I never dealt with them, I guess, with drugs or something, but they were all going to jail. So it was more or less everybody around me was dying or going to jail, and it was like my life was being spared.
So back then, was you working a job?
No, I probably worked a couple of times, but not really. Like, no, I wasn't like when, probably at 16, 15, I went and worked at Hardee's for about 4 months. And then, a little older, my mom got me a job at the hospital. And I tried to work there for probably 6 months, and it just working just wasn't for me because that instant gratification. It was to the point that I wanted what I wanted, and once I started selling drugs, I couldn't stop.
All right, so getting into the 90s, like, kind of tell me what it was like coming out from the late 80s into the 90s.
Like in the 80s, so the end of the 80s era.
And
There's a lot of crack going on. So if you survived that era, you were a hell of a person. Cause like even with me, I we don't know. We smoking like people, we selling drugs. We got so many drugs. So it was to where sometime like in the end of the 80s, it went to that era with our people that a lot of them became drug addicts because the ballers, the first thing we were doing, we was lacing our weed. And I remember like in the end of the 80s, I would everybody would come over just because I always had people always around. So it would be crazy that I would break down some dope. And it was so crazy. I break down dope, and we thought we was doing it, and the little shake some of it, put it in our weed. And one day, my baby daddy, John, he told me, he said, he said, you call everybody a crackhead. He said, you one too, because you putting it in your joint. And I tried to justify, and I thought about it. Then I thought about how a few of them in that era started really smoking crack from smoking these primos and stuff. So that era of really that 80s era, it sent a lot of people to prison for one. A lot of our black brothers, they went to jail because of crack. So they distributed out to them, as you know this, and everybody went to jail. The others, they was on crack and they went to prison for being on crack. They didn't even get rehabilitation. So that's how that crack era went. Go into the 90s, it got better for me because now, hey, I'm not doing this. I don't want to sell no crack no more because I graduated now. Here come like Kush, chronic. I ain't gonna even say Kush, chronic. So probably 1988, I start smoking. I started probably my first joint 1988. I was pregnant with Shamika, and it was
That's
my
your second
birthday.
child.
My second child, Shamika by John John. I was pregnant and I lived in Lincoln Gardens. I'm selling dope. I'm still selling dope. That's what's crazy. Is crack gone? But this is 19, like I said, 88. So crack is in full effect with that. But I went back to that because this is when I started smoking the weed. So I met some LA cats. This guy named Dulo, and they were down in Lincoln Gardens and 12th Street with this dude Gabe or G Day. I forget his name, but they were all down there with them, and they started coming with it. So I was pregnant. I had walked to Truman because it was my birthday, June 8th. I walked to Truman. I was like, I'm gonna just have the baby. I wasn't smoking, I wasn't doing
You was at
anything.
your mom's house.
No, I was at my house at this time. I lived in Lincoln Gardens by myself. So when I come back home, it's Dulo over there, Pee Wee Toombs. They have me a gumbo. And I'm talking about a big old gumbo. So I eat the gumbo, and Dulo pulls out this big old joint of some chronic. And he like, just hit it one time. I hit it. And I had Shamika the next morning. So that's the first time I smoked it, and ever since I wanted to smoke it. So just going back into the 90s, now I don't want to sell crack no more. I want to sell chronic because I done met these LA cats I'm dealing with. I don't want this weed that's popping and messing my clothes up no more. And for real, I'm the first person in the city that got this bomb ass weed
So
that
how much back then? How much was a pound?
a pound back then was probably 88, probably like 35, 4,000. But now you go to 92, 94, it go to six to seven to $8,000.
So when you start messing with it, it was
It
about
was
close.
way less, yes.
This the early '90s, roughly.
Yeah. Now it's
You
the
one of the
90s.
first people to touch down in the city with the Kush
Yes.
or chronic.
Yes.
And so what you selling? What is it going for back then?
So back then I'm selling 100 sacks.
108.
What is it, 90s? I'm selling these 7 grams and stuff for $250.
So what's your clientele like? Cause we know you ain't got regular weeds.
Everybody, rich. We always smoked, and I mean they had weed, but I had the weed. I brought weed to Kansas City. Somebody else might have had it, but I know I introduced it to a lot of people. The football players, I would sell it to football players. Dale Carter, Dale, all them. I sold it because they needed it for females, people that even if they didn't smoke it, they wanted it for females. I had the whole city. I had Kansas, the Kansas cats. Everybody came over. Everybody came because I had something that nobody had, and it was exotic.